Ontario government announces further measures to combat COVID-19. Dan Kearns, Local Journalism Initiative reporter for The Standard. Durham Kawartha Lakes. The Ontario government has made some adjustments to COVID-19 regulations to try to protect the province from the virus. On Friday, April 16th, provincial government officials announced all non-essential workplaces in the construction sector will be closed. All retail stores which are currently allowed to have in-store shopping will be limited to allowing 25% capacity inside, and outdoor social gatherings and events will be prohibited, except for with members of the same household or one other person from outside the household who lives alone, or a caregiver for any member of the household. Weddings, funerals, and other religious services will be limited to 10 people indoors or outdoors, but receptions are prohibited. The stay-at-home order was extended for an additional 2 weeks as well. This means the stay-at-home order won't expire until at least May 20th. In order to limit the transmission of the variants of concern, the government is also restricting travel into Ontario from the provinces of Manitoba and Quebec, with the exception of purposes such as work, healthcare services, transportation and delivery of goods and services, or exercising Aboriginal or treaty rights, a provincial press release added. Premier Doug Ford, at a press conference, explained why the province is taking these additional steps. We're losing the battle between the variants and vaccines. The pace of our vaccine supply has not kept up with the spread of the COVID-19 variants. We are on our heels, but if we dig in and remain steadfast, we can turn this around, Premier Ford said. The government had announced that day they were going to give police forces the power to stop vehicles to inquire about an individual's reasons for leaving their home, and to question people who are outside of their home about why they were not at their residence. However, this measure led to a lot of public outcry and resistance from police chiefs in Ontario, such as in Durham. Yesterday, the Ontario government announced new measures that are intended to limit the spread of COVID-19. This included enhanced enforcement measures for police officers. However, DRPS officers will not be conducting random vehicle or pedestrian stops in our community under this new legislation, read a statement from Durham Regional Police. We will continue to engage our community, educate when appropriate, and enforce when necessary any breaches of the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, EMCPA, or the Reopening Ontario Act, ROA. A day after these regulations were announced, Solicitor General Sylvia Jones released a statement saying the government was repealing the ability for police to ask you why you were out, or to do random vehicle stops to check why people are out. However, she left the door open for police enforcement of suspected gathering participants. If a police officer or other provincial offences officer has reason to suspect that you are participating in an organized public event or social gathering, they may require you to provide information to ensure you are complying with restrictions, the Solicitor General's statement read.
An open letter to Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario. Well, the latest round of lockdowns has given us all pause to think. I have no question restrictions are necessary, and I heartily agree with the intent of all the lockdowns. Some may choose to ruminate on disgruntled thoughts, stewing in their own beef. But I choose to trust our public servants are doing their very best with the very best intents as the information coalesces with their perspective. I believe they have the best information. But even the best information can get slightly skewed in favor of determination. It can stimulate a partial tunnel vision as a knee-jerk response. However, this leads me to think towards solutions that may help open up possibilities for things. After all, what good is it to dwell on what's disagreeable anyway? That's the refuge of a lazy heart. So, in the spirit of cooperation and possibility thinking, I offer a thought. It may lead to a better sense of will for the people of Ontario, certainly for a segment of them anyway. I'm hoping it may also lead to creative, cooperative solutions for those who have chosen to feel repressed by the good controls the Ontario government has placed on COVID. Creative solutions are the key. Remember, readers, these lockdowns are an effort to shackle COVID or severely restrict its ability to spread. Our co-working with these regulations dramatically increases the effectiveness of regulating the COVID virus. Let's look at what have been the most effective barriers to COVID. 1. Testing and so filtering out people who may carry the COVID virus, requiring them to consider the lives of others and self-isolate. 2. As an extension of this thinking, under lockdown, staying enclosed in an environment with only one's closest circle of family in one dwelling. 3. Ensuring a barrier to prevent the transmission of the virus between individuals has been found to be a good defense in public places. This is what the Board of Education has implemented within schools, so students won't or are less likely to contact the virus if anyone else has it without their knowledge. 4. The wearing of masks to limit the dispersion of the virus through exhalation, including speech. 5. Keeping a safe distance of approximately 6 feet or 2 meters apart is indicated and therefore recommended by the Health Department and so enforced by authorities in Ontario and across Canada. 6. The consistent use of hand sanitizers to prevent the surface transmission of the virus and kill it on surfaces it's applied to, including but not limited to human skin. These sanitizers are recommended in conjunction with a regimen of regular washing with soap and water in order to prevent any buildup or oversaturation. Regular washing with soap and water has been advised from the start of COVID, recommended as a part of a good health practice anyway. Although washing in excess can cause dryness of skin and or chafing, washing moderately is better, approximately 2 to 3 times a day. Perspective. Assembly is very significant to worshippers, as it is to others as well for social reasons, but it is particularly so for those who gather for spiritual purposes. The amazing hope engendered by the gathering of believers could contribute to optimism sadly needed in our general populace. This is not favoritism, but acknowledging a pre-established purpose for these gatherings. They have always been an aid to the healthy function of our society as a whole, even beyond the borders of the faith community, to the establishing and maintaining of social order, respect of governing bodies, and the dignity of the individual. So, while still satisfying all the requirements for safety, I would like to advocate for a possible concession in the lockdown restrictions, but allow for social interaction of a kind, much along the lines of virtual gathering. Let's call it augmented gathering. With all restrictions being observed, it involves the gathering of churchgoers, of which there is a considerable portion of the population across the board. I would say it could be limited to those places of worship already registered as viable religious organizations, so no one may use this as a loophole to start gathering under false pretenses. Here's the suggestion. 1. People be enclosed within personal vehicles during services offered by their places of worship, as an even better barrier than in public schools. In schools, these barriers are not totally enclosed like in a private space. 2. Permits can be given to these places to broadcast their services on a local radio frequency limited to the area of their property. 3. Cars could park 2 meters apart. The size of the parking lot should be taken into account for the calculation of new attendance numbers. This would be an amendment to the restrictions to the numbers allowed to gather presently on any of these properties for these reasons. Religious staff workers would act as security and monitor the parking lot to ensure all windows are closed while on the property. Otherwise, carloads would be required to leave. Places of worship could purchase and install small broadcast units to send the service to the radios of parishioners not registered to attend within the building, but who are registered to attend in, let's call it, the overflow area for the service. This would allow the clergy to effectively minister to those within the building as per present restrictions, even if it was only 5 people. In addition, this would also provide the environment so the service could be generated. Then those attending in the vehicles could receive encouragement through the ministry via the broadcast as well. I believe this allowance would be seen as a creative effort by the Ontario government to accommodate the need for inclusion in society and address a very significant need for the spiritual community of Ontarians. It could go a very long way to alleviating the perception, by some out there, albeit to a degree erroneously, of the government being heavy-handed and being out of touch with the reality people are going through in their personal lives during COVID. Please don't get me wrong. I don't believe for one moment our public servants are insensitive or detached in this dilemma. Yet I do think something in this direction, with a view on other concessions to other public sector gatherings, could break down negative momentum and enlist hope in the hearts of many to help you in your difficult task. Thank you so much for your carefully considered leadership to date, Premier Ford. Editor, The Standard Newspaper.
Soper Creek Wildlife Rescue in need of donations. Courtney McClure, The Standard, North Durham. The Soper Creek Wildlife Rescue, located in Bowmanville, needs help from Durham residents. Spring is one of their busiest times of year because baby animals and hatchlings are being born. Every year, the Soper Creek Wildlife Rescue accepts many injured, sick, and orphaned animals. One of the most critical pieces for these animals' survival is working incubators. They currently have 6 incubators located at the rescue, which are full to capacity with baby bunnies, squirrels, and nestling birds. The staff and volunteers at the rescue are hoping to raise enough money to buy 5 or 6 more incubators for their center. One incubator costs about $1,700 USD. Buying more incubators will provide help for the animals in need. Incubators help regulate the body temperature of sick and injured animals. Without these vital pieces of equipment, we will not be able to accept the overwhelming number of baby animals which need help, wrote Stephanie McEwen, the Soper Creek Wildlife Rescue's founding executive director, on the GoFundMe page. During the 3rd lockdown, the rescue canceled their baby shower fundraiser. This is the largest fundraiser they run. It helps them pay expenses like running their wildlife center and buying imported food for specific wildlife species. It also helps them buy medical equipment and pay vet bills for the animals. In addition, they've also canceled their group workshops and wellness programs. There are many ways residents living in Durham can support the Soper Creek Wildlife Rescue. Their website, sopercreekwildlife.com, has a list of household supplies the rescue is accepting. They are also encouraging residents to enroll their children into their programming or attend on-site events. It's important to note, Soper Creek Wildlife Rescue does not receive funding from the Canadian or Ontario government. Stephanie McEwen founded the Soper Creek Wildlife Rescue in 2016. She is the founding executive director at the rescue facility and has worked there since it opened. The rescue is made up of 4 staff members and over 165 volunteers. Please remember to call the rescue before coming to their facility with an injured or abandoned animal. This is to ensure volunteers are on site and are properly equipped during the time of your arrival. Soper Creek Wildlife Rescue is not permitted to accept raccoons, deer, black bears, or cougars. They encourage residents to visit the Ontario Wildlife Rescue website at ontariowildliferescue.ca for more information.
The Standard Podcast was produced by Greenstream Studio for the Standard newspaper.